Most people will never tell you their greatest weakness, but they'll always show it. You just have to know where to look. It shows up in the little things, the shift in tone when they're challenged, the sudden silence when ignored, the over-explaining when they feel dismissed. What they defend emotionally is what they fear losing. And that is the pressure point. Machiavelli understood that true control isn't about dominance. It's about insight. Find the one thing a person can't stand to lose, and you own the board. In this video, I'll show you how to read those signs, identify hidden weaknesses in others, and later, how to protect your own, so no one ever uses it against you. Because weakness doesn't make you a target, hiding it poorly does. Niccolo Machiavelli wasn't a monster. He was a realist, someone who saw the world not as we wish it to be, but as it is. In his book, The Prince, he never told rulers to be cruel for fun. He told them to be prepared, to see people clearly, and understand that most hide their true nature behind a mask of virtue. The same applies to weakness. People hide their fears, desires, and insecurities behind false confidence, charm, and silence. But those masks are thin. And Machiavelli believed that if you know what someone hides, you control what they do. This isn't about manipulation for harm. It's about awareness. Because in life, people will try to exploit your emotional blind spots. And if you don't understand your own weakness or recognize theirs, you're not just unprepared, you're exposed. So let's go deeper. What is weakness, really? And how do you recognize it, even when it's hidden? When we think of weakness, we often imagine something obvious: physical fragility, lack of confidence, or emotional outbursts. But real weakness is far more subtle and far more dangerous. True weakness is emotional leverage. It's the one thing a person can't afford to lose, but also can't help needing. It might be validation, control, belonging, approval, power. Some people need to be liked. Others need to feel respected. Some fear being alone. Others fear being insignificant. And here's the catch. The more someone needs something, the easier they are to manipulate. That's why the most dangerous form of weakness is the one that hides in strength. The overachiever may secretly fear being unworthy. The loud, confident leader may crumble at the thought of losing control. The nice guy may bend over backwards out of fear of rejection. This is where Machiavellian insight becomes powerful. Because if you can read someone well enough to understand what they can't live without, you understand what they will compromise for, what they will tolerate, and what they will betray themselves to protect. The key is this: weakness is never what it appears to be. It's not the external behavior, it's the internal dependency. It's not about judging others, it's about learning to see patterns most people miss. And once you start recognizing these patterns, you'll start understanding people, not by what they show, but by what they can't afford to lose. And that's when you stop reacting and start observing strategically. Now that you understand what real weakness is, internal dependency, the next question is, how do people exploit it? The truth is, most manipulation doesn't look like manipulation. It looks like kindness, attention, even love. But underneath, it's strategic, calculated, and it's aimed at the very thing someone can't let go of. Let's say someone craves validation. A skilled manipulator might give them constant praise, not out of genuine admiration, but to create a dependency. Over time, the person starts needing that praise to feel okay. And once that need is strong enough, the manipulator begins to withdraw it, using it as a tool to control behavior. Or consider someone who fears being alone. They may tolerate toxic treatment just to avoid abandonment. The person exploiting them senses this and uses it. Through guilt, fear, or passive threats of leaving, they stay in control. This is how emotional leverage becomes power. Machiavelli said, "Men are driven by two principal impulses, either by love or by fear." He understood that the person who can trigger one of those, or both, gains influence over others without force. The ruler who knows what his people fear can keep them in line without lifting a sword. In everyday life, this happens constantly. Bosses use fear of job loss. Partners use fear of rejection. Friends may even use subtle forms of guilt or flattery to keep control. And while this might sound dark, the point isn't to become a manipulator. It's to be someone who recognizes the game. Because when you can see emotional leverage being used, whether on you or by you, you gain clarity. You stop being reactive. You start being strategic. You realize that most people are walking around with open doors to their minds, not because they're weak, but because they don't know where their doors are. And if you don't know your own, someone else will walk right through them. Most people are easy to read. Once you know what to look for, they wear their weaknesses on their sleeves, even if they think they're hiding them. The key is to stop listening to what they say and start watching what they defend, what they chase, and what they fear. The fastest way to spot hidden weakness is to look for disproportionate emotion. When someone overreacts to rejection, criticism, or being ignored, you're seeing a flare from their internal world. That's not just emotion, it's exposure. Someone who panics at being left out likely craves inclusion. A person who brags constantly probably fears insignificance. The person who avoids conflict at all costs likely associates confrontation with rejection or abandonment. Now here's where it becomes powerful. Once you know what someone needs emotionally, you know what they will trade to get it. They might trade truth for validation, dignity for attention, freedom for approval. That's where leverage lives. Machiavellian influence isn't about brute force. It's about subtle control. And if you can control how someone feels, you don't need to control their actions. They'll adjust their behavior to preserve the feeling. Let's say someone thrives on being the smartest in the room. You can challenge them directly, or you can quietly lead them into a trap where their pride makes them predictable. Or someone who fears abandonment. You don't need to threaten to leave, just go silent. The panic will do the work for you. To be clear, this isn't about cruelty. It's about understanding the mechanics behind power, influence, and behavior. Most people try to influence others with logic or persuasion, but logic rarely moves people. Need does. So if you want real influence, don't ask, what do they want? Ask, what do they fear losing? Because that's what they'll protect at all costs. And if you know what someone will protect at all costs, you know exactly where to strike, or exactly how to lead. The goal isn't to hurt. The goal is to see clearly. Because when you see clearly, the game changes. If someone truly sees your weakness, not your flaws, but your emotional dependency, they own a part of you. And the worst part? They don't need to use it today. They can wait. Weeks, months, even years. Quiet leverage is still leverage. The first step to protection is identification. What do you need so badly that you'd compromise to keep it? Approval? Belonging? Recognition? Most people never ask this, and that's why they're easy to manipulate. You can't protect what you won't admit. Once you identify the core need, strip it of shame. Everyone has one. Machiavelli would argue the problem isn't the need, it's pretending you don't have it. Next, diversify your identity. If your entire sense of worth is tied to being the smart one, the strong one, or the kind one, then whoever threatens that image can control you. But if your identity is layered, no single blow breaks you. Create internal redundancy. Value yourself in multiple ways. Let strength come from versatility, not a title. Then comes boundary creation. Emotional manipulators operate like pickpockets. They need proximity. Distance protects. If someone makes you feel guilty for asserting a boundary, that's the first red flag they're trying to access what you're hiding. And when you feel that flash of panic, that desperate urge to explain, please, or prove something, pause, breathe. That pause is power. Emotional regulation isn't about suppressing feelings. It's about not handing them over to someone else. Finally, be unreadable when it counts. You don't have to wear a mask all the time, but in rooms where power is currency, don't put your wounds on display. People can't weaponize what they can't see. Protect your weakness not by denying it, but by owning it. Because once it's yours, truly yours, it's no one else's to use. And that, right there, is the quiet kind of power most people never learn. What if I told you that the very thing you're trying to hide could become your greatest source of power? Because here's the truth most people never hear. Weakness only controls you when you try to hide it. But once you expose it to yourself, own it, and repurpose it, that same weakness becomes the most confusing, disarming, and untouchable part of who you are. This is the Machiavellian flip. It doesn't mean turning soft. It means turning strategic. Because when others can't figure out what you fear losing, they can't trap you. And when they think they know, but you've already made peace with it, their leverage crumbles. Let's say you have a deep fear of not being respected. If you hide it, you'll chase status, approval, applause. And that chase makes you predictable, controllable. But if you own that fear, if you admit it to yourself, even say it out loud, you dismantle the weapon. No one can shame you for what you've already accepted. This is how the Machiavellian mind builds psychological armor, not by pretending to be invulnerable, but by becoming immune to exposure. And immunity comes from clarity. The strongest people aren't the ones who hide best. They're the ones who walk into the room knowing exactly where they're exposed and not flinching. They can talk about rejection, abandonment, fear of failure, not to get sympathy, but because no one can hold it over them anymore. It's the paradox of power. When you show nothing, people come closer. But when you show selectively, calculatedly, you become unreadable in a different way. Now you're not just hiding weakness, you're using it to signal strength. This is what throws manipulators off. They expect a mask. They don't expect honesty. Because honesty with no shame is hard to manipulate. So here's how to flip your weakness and turn it from emotional liability to strategic edge. Pinpoint it with brutal clarity. Don't settle for vague terms like insecurity or fear of failure. Dig deeper. What exactly triggers it? Who does it show up around? What outcome terrifies you? Own it like a weapon. The moment you name it out loud, to yourself or others, it loses its hold. When you speak it before anyone else can, you take away their ammunition. Redefine its meaning. Weakness in the right frame becomes specialization. A fear of chaos might mean you're deeply organized. A craving for validation might make you a persuasive communicator. Find the advantage in the flaw. Use it selectively. You don't need to put it on display, but revealing it strategically in the right moments can disarm others. Vulnerability shown without neediness signals confidence, and that flips the power dynamic instantly. Don't bury your weakness, weaponize it. Show it on your terms, not theirs. Because once you master the flip, people can still see your weakness, but they'll have no idea what to do with it. And in a world full of people hiding behind masks, the person with nothing to hide becomes the most dangerous of all. Before we close, drop a comment and write, "I play the game. I don't get played." Let it be your mark, a signal that you understand the game now, and you're no longer a piece on the board. Now you see the strings, the invisible ones, the fears, needs, and anchors that control behavior. You see how people are moved, not by logic, but by loss, by love, by validation, by identity. And you see how you're moved too. But now, you have a choice. You can use this knowledge to exploit others, or to protect yourself. You can pretend the game doesn't exist, or you can learn to play it ethically. Because Machiavelli never asked you to be cruel. He asked you to stop being naive. If you want clarity, you need to observe. If you want power, you need to pause. If you want peace, you need to see yourself clearly before anyone else does. No one escapes their weakness, but those who face it master it.